On June 12, 2025, Air India Flight 171 took off from Ahmedabad, headed for London. But it was only in the air for 34 seconds. 34 seconds. And that was the start of one of the most devastating and mysterious aviation disasters we've seen in a long, long time. So let's break down what we know about what went so horribly wrong.
Thrust not achieved. Falling. That's it. Those are the last chilling words we have from the cockpit. It's a terrifying, desperate message that gets right to the heart of the mystery. How could a brand new state-of-the-art airliner just fall out of the sky?
So to really get a grip on this, we need to look at exactly what happened in those final, crucial seconds right after the wheels left the runway. Just look at how fast this all happens. At 1:38:44, it's a normal takeoff, but only 11 seconds later, it hits its peak altitude, just 625 feet, and then it just stops climbing. 5 seconds after that, the pilot makes that final, desperate call, and a mere 13 seconds later, it's all over. A total, catastrophic failure in the time it takes to draw a single breath.
And the human cost, it's just staggering. Over 270 people are thought to have died. That includes all 242 passengers and crew members, plus at least 35 students on the ground when the plane came down on a college hostel. Incredibly, there was one single survivor. Just a tragedy on an unimaginable scale.
You know, in the chaos right after a crash like this, everyone's scrambling for answers. And the first big clues, they didn't come from the black boxes. No, they came from a 17-year-old kid who just happened to be filming the takeoff from a nearby rooftop with his phone.
What his camera caught, along with footage from the airport's own CCTV, was just wrong. It showed the plane in a state that made absolutely zero sense for takeoff. Investigators were looking at two huge contradictions right from the start.
Okay, so this table really lays out the core puzzle. When you take off, you need your wing flaps down to give you lift, and you pull your landing gear up right away to get rid of drag. But AI-171 was doing the complete opposite. Its gear was still down, but its flaps were up. That's not just wrong, it's an aerodynamic nightmare for a plane trying to climb.
So, you might be thinking, was this pilot error? Well, probably not. Not with an experienced crew and all the alarms and warnings on a modern Dreamliner, which pointed investigators toward a much more terrifying idea: a complete and total loss of all power.
Right, and this is the absolute key here. That weird setup with the flaps and the gear, that wasn't the cause of the crash. It was a symptom of something much, much worse that was happening inside that airplane's systems.
And that's where this little device comes in, the ram air turbine, or the RAT. The easiest way to think about it is like a little windmill that drops out of the plane's belly. It only ever deploys automatically in the absolute worst-case scenario when both engines fail and the backup power fails. It is the plane's Hail Mary, its absolute last line of defense. And the evidence that this thing deployed? It's pretty overwhelming. That eyewitness video shows an object under the plane that looks just like the RAT. The sole survivor reported hearing a loud bang, which was likely the hatch door flying open, and then saw the lights flicker as the RAT started redirecting emergency power. And maybe, most importantly, sound analysts found a propeller-like noise on the recording that just shouldn't be there. All signs pointed to one thing: the plane had lost all power.
All right, so we're pretty sure the plane lost all its power. But the next big question is, how? How does that even happen to one of the most advanced airliners in the world? Investigators started looking down three main paths.
There are basically three main theories on the table. First, could the fuel have been contaminated? That could clog up and kill the engines. Second, maybe a total electrical failure that just shut down the entire plane. Or third, the rarest scenario of all, a dual engine failure, where both engines just stop working at the same time.
But really, it's the pilot's own words that cut through all the noise. Thrust not achieved. Thrust is that forward push you get from the engines. If you don't have it, it points the finger directly at a massive problem with both engines, making dual engine failure the most likely suspect.
But here's the thing about a failure this big. It's almost never just a piece of metal breaking. It's usually the final, tragic link in a very long chain of human and systemic failures. And so, the investigation had to get bigger, looking at the two companies responsible for this plane, Air India and its maker, Boeing. So the investigation really splits into two big questions. You've got Air India on one side, was this a maintenance failure? And you've got Boeing on the other. Was this a manufacturing defect? Was this plane flawed from the day it rolled off the assembly line? Let's look at both.
When you look at Air India's record, some red flags pop up. I mean, this exact plane that crashed had a history. It had a fuel leak back in 2021 that was so bad it had to make an emergency landing. And on the day of the crash, people on an earlier flight said the AC and entertainment systems were on the fritz. And that's not even getting into wider issues, like accusations that the airline faked safety reports and had major problems with pilot fatigue.
But then you turn to Boeing, and a whole other story starts to unfold. A really disturbing one. For years, you had whistleblowers from the factory where this plane was built just screaming that something was wrong. A big New York Times investigation found claims that workers were being pushed to use bad parts and that they were even leaving dangerous debris like metal shavings inside the planes.
And it gets worse. These aren't just vague complaints. We're talking about a quality manager, a guy whose entire job is to make sure these planes are safe, who is so shaken by what he saw that he told his own wife he would never, ever fly on one. Think about that for a second.
But this next one is maybe the most shocking of all. Another quality manager, a woman named Cynthia Kitchens, said she asked her boss if he'd let his own kids fly on planes that had known defects. And his answer? They're all going overseas. That implies they knew there were issues and that planes with those problems were being delivered to airlines outside the US, like Air India.
So when you step back and you put all of this together, the crash of AI-171 starts to feel less like a random freak accident and a lot more like something that was just waiting to happen, the culmination of years and years of ignored warnings.
And this might just be the most haunting detail in this entire story. A whistleblower named John Barnett, who has since tragically died, he predicted years ago that the shortcuts at the factory could lead to a catastrophic failure, and he gave a timeline. He said it could take 10 to 12 years to show up. The Dreamliner that crashed in Ahmedabad was 11 years old, right in that window.
And that just leaves us with this one final, unavoidable question. The official investigation will eventually give us the exact mechanical cause. But the story here seems so much deeper. When a company's own safety experts are telling them for years that their practices are dangerous, was a disaster like this ever a matter of if, or was it just a matter of when?